Okay, let's pick up where we left off from our first video. So just to remember and keep in mind that Uther has died because the traitors poisoned the wells. So only Merlin was left, and Merlin called everybody together, the bishops, the lords, and the common folk to the London Square, and he had taken a blade and put it into a stone and said, "Whoso pulleth out the sword from the stone is born the rightful king of England." So let's pick up right here. In the days that followed, knights and barons, cowherds and bakers, an endless parade of would-be kings eagerly pulled at the sword, but none could loosen it, let alone draw it forth or pull it out. When they accused Merlin of trickery or magic, he said, "The rightful king has not come yet. God will make him known at the proper time." Now it happened that a great tournament was held in London. Among those who came were Sir Ector, Sir Kay, and young Arthur, who served Kay. So eager was the boy to see the joust that he forgot to pack Kay's sword. There was great upset when the mistake was discovered. "Woe to you, boy," snarled Kay. "If your error cost me the victory, I would otherwise win today." Even Sir Ector scolded Arthur and ordered, "Go back directly and fetch the missing sword." Angry at his carelessness and impatient to see the contest, Arthur started homeward. Then he suddenly reined in his horse. So Arthur, we can tell, was angry for making this mistake. So he knew that he made a mistake. In the deserted city square was a massive stone with a sword plunged into its center. "Surely that sword is as good as the one I left at home," he said. "I will borrow it. When Kay is finished, I will return it to this curious monument." So obviously, young Arthur didn't realize that this sword that was stuck in the middle of this town square in this stone was the sword that Merlin had plunged into the stone. So saying, he dismounted or got off of his horse, scrambled up the stone, took the sword handle and tugged. The sword did not move. Impatient to return to the tournament, he pulled again. This time the sword slid easily out of the stone. In his haste, he did not notice the words upon the blade. Shoving the weapon into his belt, he remounted and raced to where Sir Kay waited his turn upon the field. The moment he saw the golden words upon the blade, Kay began to tremble with excitement. So apparently Kay knew what those words meant. Kay knew what that sword was. When Arthur asked what was amiss, Kay shouted, "Go, get away. You have caused enough trouble." Remember, Kay is vain. He thinks about himself, and he's jealous of Arthur. So Kay knew exactly what this sword was, but he did not want Arthur to know. But Arthur was curious, so he followed as Kay ran to Sir Ector. "Look, father," cried Kay, "here is the sword of the stone. Therefore it is I who must be king of all this land." When Sir Ector and the others saw the sword and read the golden inscription or writing, they began to shout, the sword from the stone, the king's sword." Hearing only this much, Arthur thought that he had stolen a king's weapon. As people hurried excitedly toward Kay, Arthur spurred his horse away, certain he had committed a great crime. Again, Arthur realized his mistake. Looking back, he saw Kay and Sir Ector ride off, surrounded by the greatest lords of the realm. Were they taking Kay to trial, he wondered? Had he brought ruin upon Sir Ector's household? It sounds like Arthur feels bad for what he might have done, not really knowing what is going on. "A true knight would not run off," he said to himself, "and I am a true knight in my heart." Fearful but determined to do what was right, the boy wheeled his horse around. The great square was now filled with people. Just how terrible a crime had he committed? Okay, so here, this is some good textual evidence that really shows us a little bit about Arthur. He says a true knight would not run off. Now remember, young Arthur has not been knighted, but he feels that in his heart he is a knight. So he knows that a true king would not run off. He is being loyal, and he is determined to do what is right. So we see some characteristics here. We see his loyalty. We see his determination as well. Okay, so these are just some words, characteristics that describe young Arthur. He has loyalty and determination. Okay, so remember, the people are filling up the square because Sir Ector and Sir Kay had run off, and Arthur, it seems like he wants to do what is right. Upon the stone stood Kay, holding the sword. The crowd shouted each time he held the blade aloft. The silence fell over the throng. Merlin had appeared at the edge of the square. People stood aside and let the magician approach the stone. "Are you the one who pulled the sword from the stone?" Merlin asked. "I am holding it, am I not?" Kay replied. "The rightful king could pull it free 100 times," said Merlin. "Slip the sword into the groove and pull it out again." It sounds like Merlin wants Sir Kay to prove that he is the rightful owner of the sword. With a shrug, Kay reinserted the sword, but when he tried to jerk it free, it would not budge. Suddenly, all eyes turned toward Arthur, who was pushing his way through the crowd, bellowing out at the top of his lungs, "It wasn't Kay's fault. I brought him the sword." Merlin peered closely at Arthur. Then he smiled and said, "Climb up and draw the sword from the stone." Uncertainly, Arthur clambered or climbed up beside Kay. Grasping the pommel or handle of the sword, he easily pulled the sword out. Then Merlin cried, "This is Arthur, son of King Uther Pendragon, Britain's destined king." An astonished Sir Ector knelt to pay homage or respect, followed by Kay and many others. But all around there was growing confusion and dispute. Some cried, "It is the will of heaven, long live the king," while others cried, "It is Merlin's plot to put a beardless boy, a puppet, on the throne, and so rule the land." It sounded like some of the people were excited that Arthur was still alive and now king, but it also sounded like some people were not excited about it. But the cries of "Long live King Arthur" soon carried the day. And that is the end of our reading. Okay, and our last page just has our vocabulary to know and a picture of King Arthur. All right, so think about how Arthur changed over time. Okay, as young Arthur, he was determined. He felt like he was a knight at heart, even though he was not. He stayed loyal to his family. He felt bad when he thought he made a horrible mistake, so he's showing loyalty to them. Okay, even though it turned out in his favor and he is now king, Arthur showed loyalty. And we can say that he proves to be a mighty king. Okay, so that's just some information that you are going to need for your project. Obviously, you are going to need to pull in more information, more textual evidence to show how exactly Arthur changes from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And you are going to need to find textual evidence that proves the theme, whether this theme is loyalty or remaining loyal to your family or determination or something else that you might be able to support with evidence from the text. Okay, if you have any questions about this text, please reach out to me or your language arts teacher.